Members, it's past 4:30. We have formal quorum, so I call to order the 15th meeting of the Bills Committee on Stamp Duty Amendment Bill 2013. First item on the agenda is meeting with the administration. So I will invite the administration in first, and as before, I'll take the time to declare that I own properties and I'm also an accountant by profession. I provide various taxation services for my client, but my firm does, but I'm not involved in any of the business. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong, the same declaration as before. Dr. Kenneth Lau, I declare that I own properties, and for the firm that I work for, it's engaged in taxation advice as well. Mr. Tony Chair, I also declare the interest as before. Mr. Dennis Kwok, the same declaration as before. So may I welcome Professor Casey Chan for attending this Bills Committee's meeting. In the past, members asked Professor Casey Chan to attend our meeting to heed members' views, and Professor Chan has made arrangements and swiftly responded to our request. And I understand that Professor Chan would like to give some opening remarks on the government's position. Over to you. Thank you. I'd like to first thank Chairman of the Bills Committee on Stamp Duty Amendment Bill 2013, your good self, Madam Chair, and the members of the committee for their hard work since May last year in holding more than a dozen meetings to scrutinize the Stamp Duty Amendment Bill 2013. I've been paying attention to the discussions by the Bills Committee and I understand members' concerns. By attending today's meeting, I can not only listen to members' views in person, but also allow me to reiterate the government's policy intent and elaborate on the government's position in respect of areas that members have concerns. Before focusing on specific aspects of the bill, I would like to briefly outline the policy background and intent of the bill. Under the influence of exceptionally low interest rates and abundant liquidity, as well as the tight supply of residential properties, the property market in Hong Kong has shown signs of an irrational state of exuberance over the past few years. Although the rise in property prices, residential property price was temporarily arrested upon the introduction of the enhanced special stamp duty and the buyer stamp duty in end October 2012, there were signs of spreading the overheating situation to the non-residential property market. To address the overheating situation in the property market, the government announced on the 22nd of February 2013 the introduction of a new round of measures that is to double the ad valorem stamp duty (AVD) rates on transactions for residential and non-residential properties, and to advance the timing for charging of AVD on non-residential property transactions in order to reinforce demand management on those who have already acquired residential properties and to prevent the overheating situation from spreading to the non-residential property market. The bill reflects the above-mentioned new round of measures. When introducing the doubled AVD, we have the following major considerations. A. The measures should uphold the current stamp duty regime on properties by charging AVD on the basis of the considerations of property transactions in the instrument on a progressive scale. B. The measures should, having regard to the situation in the property market, enhance the extent of demand-side management with a view to cooling down the overheated property market immediately so as to reverse the market expectation that property prices will only rise. And C. The measures should be consistent with the government's policy directive, that is, to accord priority to the home ownership needs of Hong Kong permanent residents and take a stringent approach in drawing up the exemption rules at the same time to ensure the effectiveness of the measures. Since the introduction of the doubled AVD measures, as reflected by statistics, the property market has shown signs of cooling down with dwindled transactions and stabilized prices. Overall flat prices increased by an average of 0.1% per month during March 2013 to March 2014, a notable deceleration from the monthly average increase of 2.7% in the first 2 months of 2013. The rental prices increased by an average of 0.1% per month during March 2013 to March 2014, a reduction from the monthly average increase of 0.4% in the first 2 months of 2013, and a notable deceleration from the monthly average increase of 1.9% in 2012. For the non-residential property market, the prices of office and flatted factory space increased by an average of 0.3% and 0.1% respectively per month during March 2013 to March 2014, a notable deceleration from the monthly average increases of 2.6% and 4.1% respectively in the first 2 months of 2013. The prices of retail space between March 2013 and March 2014 showed virtually no change further to the monthly average increase of 1.9% in the first 2 months of 2013. During the same period, the monthly average increase of retail prices of the rental prices of retail, office and flatted factory space continued to decelerate. For example, in the case of retail space, the increase was reduced to 0.4% from 0.7%, with an obvious drop when compared to the monthly average increase of 1% in 2012. The above shows that the successive rounds of demand-side management measures introduced by the government have addressed the overheating situation in the property market effectively, which is in line with our policy objective. Despite the preliminary results, uncertainty still prevails in the market, and the supply of properties remains tight. Hence, we consider it necessary to maintain the measures. Next, I will respond to the major concerns that members have expressed on the bill during past meetings, including whether the measures should be applicable to non-residential properties, the stipulated period for changing properties, the handling of acquisition of a residential property together with a car parking space, and the sunset clause. According to the bill, the doubled AVD shall apply to all transactions in respect of residential and non-residential properties. That said, for consistency with the government's policy directive to accord priority to the home ownership needs of Hong Kong permanent residents, the bill proposes to exempt residential property acquired by a Hong Kong permanent resident, provided that he or she is not a beneficial owner of any other residential property in Hong Kong at the time of acquiring the concerned residential property. I understand some members have proposed that similar exemption arrangements should be available for non-residential property transactions by citing the above exemption. However, I'd like to point out that given their differences in nature, they should not be treated in the same way. The policy considerations for non-residential properties are not on a par with addressing the home ownership needs of Hong Kong permanent residents. To ensure the effectiveness of the measures and prevent the spread of overheating situation to the non-residential property market, we do not propose to provide exemption for non-residential property transactions. On the residential properties, having regard to the policy objective, legislative intent, and under the principle of not undermining the effectiveness of the measures, and after having fully considered the views of members and relevant stakeholders, we are willing to make adjustments to the proposed measures in the following 2 aspects. First, we propose to relax the 6-month time frame for owners having acquired a new residential property before disposing of their original one. Specifically, the bill currently proposes that if the Hong Kong permanent resident who acquires a new residential property has entered into an agreement for sale to dispose of his or her original and only other residential property in Hong Kong within 6 months from the date of acquiring the new property, he or she can benefit from the refund mechanism purposely drawn up to cater for the replacement needs of Hong Kong permanent residents. That is, the difference in AVD payment between the old and new rates will be refunded. Striking a balance between addressing the practical needs of the public and safeguarding the effectiveness of the measures, we propose to specify the 6-month time frame under the current arrangement in the bill be adjusted to commence from the conveyance on sale instead of the agreement for sale and purchase of the newly acquired property. We believe the above formulation can address the replacement needs of both owners who acquire existing stocks and uncompleted flats. The refund criterion is applicable across the board, clear and fair. It is easy for public understanding and facilitates effective administration by the Inland Revenue Department. In the light of the above arrangement, we also propose a slight modification to the 2-year time frame for application to the Inland Revenue Department for stamp duty refund as specified in the bill, while maintaining the 2-year application time frame after execution of an agreement for sale and purchase of the newly acquired property. We propose to include a new clause to allow for application within 2 months from the conveyance on sale of the original residential property, whichever is the later. This is meant to enable buyers of changing properties, including those who acquire uncompleted flats, to apply for refund after completion of transactions to cater for actual circumstances. The second adjustment is related to the exemption arrangement in respect of acquisition of a residential property with a car parking space. In accordance with the bill and the prevailing practice by the Stamp Office, when a Hong Kong permanent resident acting on his or her behalf in acquiring a residential property and a car parking space by a single instrument, the concerned residential property in the transaction can be exempted from the 88 vide, while the car parking space will not be exempted, given that it is a non-residential property.
In striking a balance between the prevailing stamp duty regime on property, addressing the home ownership needs of the public, and safeguarding the effectiveness of the measures, we consider the need to uphold the spirit of providing current exemption to residential properties, and in doing so to cater along the need of those in acquiring a residential property and car parking space by a single instrument by exempting the car parking space from the doubled AVD. The exemption shall be stringently drawn up with the following conditions. A. The buyer is a Hong Kong permanent resident who is acting on his or her behalf and is not a beneficial owner of any other residential property and a car parking space in Hong Kong at the time of acquisition of the concerned residential property and car parking space. B. The concerned exemption is restricted to one car parking space, irrespective of whether the car parking space is acquired for self-use or by a first-time buyer. C. The concerned car parking space must be acquired together with the residential property in a single instrument, irrespective of whether the car parking space is located in the same residential development. If the single instrument involves more than one car parking space, all the car parking spaces will not be exempted even if they are purchased jointly with the residential property. To implement the above 2 adjustment proposals, the government will submit committee stage amendments in due course. I'd like to say the two proposals are technical proposals. It is also in line with our long-standing policy. It also retains our policy intent. So these 2 adjustments does not mean that in our demand management we have any relaxation. So I don't hope, or I don't want the market to make any speculation or doubts that on the government's intention. We have a firm intention of maintaining market stability and healthy development. So I'd like to come back to the rest of my speech. Some members have suggested including a sunset clause. The government does not agree. As the government had pointed out repeatedly, we cannot willfully predict future market changes and various external factors and come up with a date as to when the demand-side management measures would not be applicable. Therefore, any prescribed sunset clause will only disseminate erroneous messages to the market and fuel demand, thus affecting the effectiveness of the measures. So, having said that, the absence of sunset clause does not mean that we will ignore the market situation. The government will continue to closely monitor the property market and changes in the external factors, take appropriate measures, including making timely adjustment to the measures with a view to safeguarding the healthy and stable development of the property market. Thus, I undertake that the government will conduct a review and report to the Legislative Council 1 year after the enactment of the legislation. Chairman, I will conclude here. My colleagues and I will be pleased to listen to members' views and respond to questions. Thank you. So, could you submit your speech through the Secretary to us? So, members who wish to speak, please raise your hand. Mr. Leung Guan-yi, 4 minutes. Chairman, first of all, I would like to declare what I declared in the past. The technical amendments are welcomed. These are what we called for, and they are technical in nature. I don't think they have a negative impact on the property market. But regarding non-residential units, there are no exemptions. I am disappointed because when you exempt car parking spaces, they are non-residential. So you are selectively applying your judgment. So whether it's SMEs, as long as it's for your own use, it's not speculation, because your sole purpose is to deter speculation. If you can prove it's for self-use, it's not speculation, then if you don't cater to business needs, we feel disappointed, because the tough measures have been placed. And how much land, commercial land, have you made available? So aside from a few sites in Kai Tak for hotels, there's been no measures for commercial property. You're just blindly acquiring land to build. So on behalf of the industry and manufacturing, all overseas chambers of commerce feel that it's destroying the business environment. So I'd like the government to elaborate and also reconsider. I would like them to take on board our views, because it has a significant impact on Hong Kong. So regardless of which tough measure, you said it's special measures in special circumstances. So destroying the business environment, I'm disappointed. Secretary, we have reiterated our stance on numerous occasions. The double stamp duty, whether it's residential or non-residential, they go hand in hand together. And we want to prevent some speculative activity spilling over into non-residential property sector. I'm aware that in the bill committee deliberations there were a lot of amendments, but after going through them, we feel that the relevant recommendations inevitably would lead to some impact on our measures. And given our sensitive market conditions, these impacts will bring about sensitive reactions. So we need to balance our demand side management. So after reviewing our policy and considering the external environment, and after listening to legislators' views, we feel that we should not make any drastic changes. Next, slum die fight. I need to declare what I've declared in the past. Secretary, we've waited for your appearance. To put it bluntly, you've shown up finally. I thought you were here to acknowledge your mistakes. Hong Kong is a capitalist environment. We need business to flourish. We don't want a stagnant economy. I understand the government wishes to assist Hong Kong permanent residents, but you shouldn't be targeting industry and commerce as well. If you don't support SME, you don't support industries, then how are we going to enact capitalism? You are afraid that speculation will spill over into non-residential property. Well, that's just your own thinking. Why can't we be flexible? You can allow people who have never owned residential property to have exemptions. Why can't you allow those who have never acquired non-residential commercial property exemptions as well? There are many options. You shouldn't brush in broad strokes. If there's no buying and selling, how can we have stability? If I don't have property, how can I develop my business? So aside from handing out some sweets, you are still bound to your old traditions. So relaxing it doesn't lead to speculation. SMEs don't have money. They save and scrape to acquire their own property. They don't want to be at the whims of landlords. Can you think along those lines? Secretary, I would like you to consider, if people have never owned non-residential property, you should give them an exemption of this DSD for first-time buyers. I've heard your opinion. You said that exemptions are given to first-time buyers who have never owned. I'm talking about first-time buyers of non-residential buyers. They have no intention, record, or background of speculation. You want, well, residential exemptions are not that easily applied to non-residential properties. And considering the policy, I wanted to take care of the needs of permanent resident first-time purchases. So there was a need for exemptions there. So I don't want to see this exemption being applied in office space, commercial space. I think they cannot be compared to. They cannot. You are very profound. You are helping first-time buyers. It's a ripple effect. You think that the speculation will spill over. You're just assuming. That's your whole one person's assumption. How can you stall all industry and commerce? We have considered legislators' views, but in the macro situation, the macro economy, we see that the non-residential sector has cooled down. The statistics have indicated that. You might disagree with the statistics, but the figures show that we achieved our policy intention. But now the market is still surrounded by uncertain factors. So we don't think any adjustment to the non-residential market is an opportune moment. Next, Jia Chun. I welcome the Secretary his technical amendments, I think this reflects the legislative intent to give priority assistance to first-time buyers or those who wish to upgrade. This amendment allows people to be treated the same. They won't have separate treatment. And I agree, it won't give the wrong message to the market that the government is relaxing its stance. The principle and the stance is the same. But I want to clarify, the Secretary said 6 months from the purchase of the property, and so the sale and purchase, it's not a contractual change. And I also want to clarify, we have to rely on documents. So when you dispose first and acquire later, so would that be considered one property or more than one property? I'll allow the Secretary to respond.
2 questions. The first one about the starting point being adjusted to commence from the conveyance on sale instead of the signing of the PASP. This remains the same in the bill. Regarding the sale, as for the use of instruments for changing properties, in the refund provision for changing properties, we specify very clearly that we're talking about changing properties rather than anything else, because this is an exemption. A follow-up question, Chair. Now the time frame will start from the conveyance on sale, and the government may also be aware of the fact that for purchase of existing stocks, the parties can set a later date for the conveyance on sale. Well, this will be an arrangement between the vendor and the purchaser in the private market. Mr. Abraham Check. Madam Chair, I declare what I have declared before. Now, on doubled AVD, Madam Chair, I think now electoral members don't have much status. Even journalists know more than we do. When journalists rang me and asked for my comments, I said I have no idea. I'd have to wait for today's meeting. So journalists have known more than we have. And the government doesn't really have to attend electoral meetings. Secretary, thank you for giving us a face. We learned about this only by reading newspapers. Now, since Secretary is here, Madam Chair, I support the introduction of stamp duties to tackle market speculation. However, the spirit and the original intention of this bill is that, according to Mr. C.Y. Leung, the Chief Executive, this is to address the home ownership needs of Hong Kong people, so that there are properties available for Hong Kong permanent residents and they are affordable. But what happens nowadays? There are no properties affordable to Hong Kong permanent residents. I respect and I support the spirit. And about the doubled AVD, in this 2013 bill, I oppose it because I don't think what you say tally with what you do. You say the whole purpose of the bill is to address residential properties. Why has it spread to non-residential properties? There was a time when you said that there were worries that hot money would spread to non-residential property market. However, let me tell you, the introduction of special stamp duty has impacted on non-residential property market for factory space. It had dropped by some 39% or so. So you were successful in impacting upon that market. And what happens when there are no property transactions? The rental prices go up. Well, our starting point is the interest of the whole of Hong Kong, not just the business and commercial sector. Now, office space, let me read it out to you. Starting from 2013, there were only 3,269 transactions, a drop by 49% comparing to 2012. So it was a success for you, but the prices never went down. Well, we didn't ask you to do this. Now, some members commended you for the spirit of the bill, but in fact, what you're doing is to rectify what you shouldn't have done in the first place. It shouldn't have started as early as the PSP preliminary sale agreement for sale and purchase. So now what you propose is just changing it back to the starting point. So coming back to the Clause 3, Clause 8 of the original stamp duty bill, you are just reverting to the original. Never mind about that. I just hope you can consider the Singapore example. We always have to learn from Singapore. Singapore used to learn from us, but now it's the contrary for non-residential properties. If they are bought for self-use and if it's kept for self-use for 3 years, for investment, for self-use, whatever, and then within 3 years, within 5 years, within whatever time frame you stipulate, you should be given. I'm sorry, your time is up. Your time is almost up. 4 minutes. 4 minutes for each member. I have given discretion to give you a little bit more time. All right, Mr. Shek, please finish your question quickly. Madam Chair, it's not that I don't want to speak, but they don't allow me to speak. Professor Chen. Perhaps I'll respond to that later. Mrs. Sin Chung Kai. Madam Chair, now there are two proposals. I can say that they don't really tackle the problem at source. Now, the original intention is to allow exemption for buyers of changing properties. Now, the time frame will be extended by 30, 45 days, and there have been suggestions of extending it by a year. We want to oppose your proposed amendment, but the purpose of the exemption originally should be for changing properties and not for speculators. Well, since you've proposed the amendments, why don't you take a step further, extend it by a year? I've read the Chinese version and then the English version before I finally understand what it's about. Of course, we have lawyers in the front row. They will be happy in explaining to their customers. But my point is, it's not practical. Can you respond to the Bills Committee? Can you respond to our suggestion to extend it to 1 year? I give you 2.5 minutes to respond to that. Professor Chen, at various stages of the Bills Committee's discussion, there have been comments expressed by members on changing properties as well as the purchase of uncompleted flats. We may not be able to take a broad brush approach or to tackle the various scenarios. About the amendment proposed this time, these are technical amendments, and they can address in one go all the issues relating to second-hand properties and uncompleted flats. And the direction is consistent. We believe that by commencing the time frame from the conveyance on sale, there will be consistency. We have assessed the normal situations of changing properties and believe this is appropriate. I support this technical amendment, but my question is whether the administration will consider extending further the time frame from 6 months to a year. Secretary. Now, this arrangement is to start the 6-month period from the conveyance on sale. We believe this will be appropriate. We don't want the time frame to be too long, and we would like to address the needs of changing properties. So, the first time you answered me, you said there were diverse views, and I have been very hardworking. I have attended all meetings, and every time I hear views that this time frame is too short, so our views are actually quite unanimous. So we've actually extended the time frame. Is 6 months enough, or how many months should it be? Now it will be. Now the time frame will start from the conveyance on sale. So actually, it has been extended. Mr. James To. A few technical issues for the Secretary. The 6-month time frame will be adjusted to commence from the conveyance on sale instead of the PSP. For existing stocks, indeed the time frame will be longer because it takes a month or two in between. For uncompleted flats, the period can be extended by 1 to 3 years. So would it be a bit unfair to buyers of existing stock? Because for uncompleted flats, it may take 1 to 3 years for the development to be completed. So the adjustment applicable to existing stock and uncompleted flats may be so different. Of course, those buying uncompleted flats will be happy. And about the proposal of exempting a residential the acquisition of a residential property with a car parking space, we welcome the suggestion. What about more than one car parking space? All right, now I understood this in para 16. Final question. Has the Secretary considered, and I'm not talking about para 16, I'm talking about a general scenario. Let's say if somebody uses one single instrument to buy 100 units in Taikushing, then the doubled AVD would only be applied once. Is it fair? Secretary, we would like to cater for the needs of buyers of existing stocks and uncompleted flats and their replacement needs. And we understand that the Bills Committee would like us to extend the time frame in relation to that, and there must be consistency if we are to provide for different types of flats. The bill would be very complex. So our understanding is that by adjusting the commencement date of the time frame, then for replacement of properties involving existing stocks and uncompleted flats, we take this across-the-board approach, and we believe this can more or less address your concerns. As for the other question on stamp duty, which is based on instruments, the use of instruments, and we believe that we must not make drastic changes to the whole stamp duty regime. This doubled AVD is just an extraordinary measure during extraordinary times, and the measure has some special features. It will not change fundamentally the stamp duty regime. So you don't care even if it's unfair. We're making adjustments based on the characteristics of the situation.
The administration can make technical amendments. The DAB will welcome that. And we also agree with the administration's efforts. Well, if you hear us, I hope you can hear the whole, and rather than just parts. The DSD is applied from, it's levied by the IRD as soon as the contract is signed, and then there's an application for a refund. So what has changed now is that there is a definition for an interim period from the temporary sale and purchase till the delivery of the unit, and that 6-month period is not changed. So if you can hear legislators' views, you could relax it from 6 to 12 months. That is not asking for too much, because there's a reason and rhyme for everything. It's just a matter of timing, a change of 6 months to 12 months. As a matter of fact, in our actual daily lives, when you move house, there's renovation. I cannot live in a new unit, and I cannot relinquish my old unit for sale. So in the sale process, it's not grocery shopping at a wet market. You have to work with real estate agents. You don't have prospective buyers every day. Even if you want to sell it cheap, there might not be people willing to take up the offer, because it is a large transaction. It's a lifelong investment, especially if you're a first-time buyer. So if you relax it an extra 6 months, from 6 to 12, I don't think that's asking for too much. I'm not saying I'm against your technical amendment. I'm just asking for a more reasonable approach. We're not trying to tank the property market. We want to help first-time buyers. The second question is Mr. James To's question. Since if there's one instrument and I can purchase a certain number or a large number of properties, it's still one document. As long as I'm a Hong Kong PR, first-time buyer, and I could purchase a lot of properties in one document. And you can't levy the DSD. Well, if that's the case, it seems that is contrary to our legislative intent, and that would be a loophole. I recall the 2012 stamp duty, the SSD, BSD, Regina Yip mentioned those under 18. So that loophole was plugged. How come? Why is this big loophole left unplugged? We're fair. Aside from tough measures, we can also have relaxed measures. I already answered Mr. James To. We have looked at this problem. We are aware of this problem. It's not a problem. It's a special feature. We are aware of it. So when we first raised this stamp duty, it is based on our document procedure. Can we amend it? Can we take care of all situations? We feel this is very complex and controversial. So we feel the whole AVD, ad valorem stamp duty, we are using interim measures. We feel that is not feasible. It's very complex. How about the 12 months? Will you consider? We've gone through serious thought, and we feel that the 6 months calculation methodology is much longer than the original methodology. I repeat my previous disclosure. Well, the government is avoiding criticism of benefiting the developers, and you're extending the time period, so you might need to make a compromise for sale and purchase of old buildings. Just now, Mr. Xin Zhonggai, we have a sale and purchase and conveyance on sale arrangement. In paragraph 14, the refund of stamp duty this methodology could be applied in old buildings. For example, 12 months. Pre-sale units could be applied. We can apply conveyance on sale to pre-sale units. So whether you buy new or old properties, they can have a longer incentives. There's no contradiction there, because you can use whichever is later. In paragraph 16b, you're saying that even if the car park is not for own use, they can still get exemption. But C says if there's more than one parking space, there's no exemption. Well, you said you don't want to, but you're allowing this to be applied in car parking spaces. That is not. You cannot explain your rationale. So there's no exemption for self-use. That is very contradictory. If you want to relax it, I support you and agree with you, but you shouldn't blow hot and cold. Just now, Hon James To, they referred to more than one properties in one document. I had mentioned this on the last occasion. This arrangement is unfair. You will not be able to deter speculators. At the same time, in the Inland Revenue document, you said you can only exempt one property in one document, and lawyers felt that only one property in one document could be exempted. So some transactions, they have used different documents to cover just one property. A lot of people have been compromised. So if you want to be uniform and just deter speculators and exempt self-use, so more than one property on one document cannot be exempted. If you want to exempt more than one property, then people that were misled previously should also be exempted. And the 6-month, 12-month issue, I have already responded. So the government has considered that and has made this amended suggestion. In the car park space, we are taking a stringent approach because we want to give priority to first-time buyers when they buy a property and a car parking space. Well, we need to deal with it very strictly. Otherwise, it would lead to unforeseeable circumstances. So we have to draw the line somewhere, and we've chosen a stringent approach. So I hope you understand that we are sincere in trying to deal with the problems highlighted. For multiple purposes on one document, in our whole system, I said that it's very complex and very hard to make amendments. So perhaps the Secretary well, one of my questions is for the Bureau. So multiple properties on one document that lead to abuse. Well, my observation, the majority of members are very concerned and they feel it's unfair. It's not in line with our legislative intent. So could you explain where lies the complexity and what are your concerns? Allow me to respond to Mr. Paultier's question. First of all, last year, 2013, the Finance Secretary announced the measures, and the IRD website and our Q&As, we collected stamp duty on one document. I'm aware Mr. Chair has a follow-up question. We will take the information and provide it to the committee. From the implementation, from the disclosure of the measure to implementation, we need to provide a clear message to the market. The DSD measure, it's a special measure, and it's based on the ad valorem stamp duty. So if the document involves residential properties, one or multiple units, we look at the total price to calculate the AVD. So if we need to make some fundamental changes, we foresee that the legal provisions would need to go through a fundamental overhaul. So not just the regime, it would also affect the consistency of the message. So we can look at the technical amendments later after the meeting. How do we define the property? How will it affect property purchase decision? We need to have objective standards. It is a self-owned property, but it might affect the different land registry registrations. So it's quite controversial. So after balancing different criteria, we have implemented the DSD under this framework. And the framework had introduced BSD and the different AVDs. Well, the Secretary, perhaps you need to provide us with a document highlighting the technical issues. In paragraph 12 and paragraph 16, we have a description of one document used to purchase multiple car parking spaces. Well, I think your response hasn't been able to alleviate legislators' concerns. I'll give you another opportunity to respond.
Perhaps at the CSA stage we can go into further details. We can submit the amendments and then explain the technical details to members. Second round, 4 minutes again. Mr. Tai Fai, thank you, Madam Chair. Now, the intention of the bill is to address the home ownership needs of Hong Kong permanent residents. In Hong Kong, we have monogamy, and unless somebody has a number of wives, there is no need to have multiple homes. If a single instrument, and yet if the single instrument contains multiple properties, you still allow exemption. And this is a flawed system. This is bureaucracy. This is a departure from the spirit of the bill. So the question is it an imperfect, flawed system? And does this override the spirit of the bill? No colleague agrees with your logic and your statement because we're not convinced by your statement. It's a departure from the spirit of the bill. Secondly, you also target non-residential properties because you're worried that the non-residential property market will be speculated. And then you talked about the success of the previous measures, meaning that fewer people can buy homes nowadays. So what is the rationale of applying this to non-residential properties? You have no justification at all, and the non-residential property market is affected. And let me be frank with you, you're trying to suppress demand so that when there is no demand, you don't need to find land to produce more housing units. I'll definitely use up all my time because some friends of the media called me and asked me not to be so agitated. But how can I not be agitated? Because they're unreasonable. It's pointless to be not agitated. So I take your platform to respond to the two media organizations. I have to be agitated because they're unreasonable. Just now I asked you about capitalism in Hong Kong. This is the cornerstone of Hong Kong's economic success, and you're actually oppressing the commercial industrial sector. So let's say a Hong Kong permanent resident has never acquired any property in Hong Kong, any residential property in Hong Kong, and that is why you're giving exemption to this Hong Kong PR. Let's say after acquiring a property, I don't sell it within 3 years. Can you also allow SMEs to do so? Can you also give them exemption? And also, this is a flawed policy. This is a flawed system. Does it override the intention of the bill? And please answer Mr. James To's question. Why do you allow exemption for a single instrument covering a property as well as car parking space, whereas for one single instrument for covering multiple residential properties, you won't give exemption? And also, tell me why you will help address home ownership needs by implementing these measures. Several questions about the system based on instruments. I understand members' concerns. However, if we are to address this issue, the complexity is far greater than allowing for an exemption over a car parking space. The impact, it will affect the whole stamp duty and ad valorem duty system. So this is our position. Now we're talking about the doubled AVD. And may I repeat once again that this is an extraordinary measure. There is an urgency to implement it in a simple manner. As for the intent of the bill, the whole demand-side management measure this time is that doubled AVD would be levied on both residential and non-residential properties, because primarily we would like to cool down the market by imposing a doubled AVD so that there will be market adjustments. And in the process, we need to take care of home ownership needs of Hong Kong people at the same time. And that is why we're giving exemptions at the same time for Hong Kong permanent residents who hasn't acquired any properties before. An exemption will be given. So on the whole, the AVD is increased, but we also allow exemptions for residential properties, and that is our explanation. That is also the intention of the bill. Next, Mr. James To. I won't repeat the question on buying 100 unit Taikoo Shing units with a single instrument. I hope the Secretary, after hearing my question, will go back and consider it, because this is a major flaw. This is a departure from the policy intent. Now, a question on the tenant purchase scheme. I don't know whether the Secretary is aware of our previous discussions. Now, the TPS is about the HA selling units to sitting tenants. Now, even there won't be any problem even if you exempt first-time buyers of TPS, unless you're saying that the housing authority will engage in market speculation and sell the TPS units to someone else. But that is not the case, right? The housing authority would definitely sell the units to sitting tenants under the TPS scheme. So some of the tenants, some of the sitting tenants may not get exemption and may have to pay doubled AVD because of the criteria, and it's not fair because they are just ordinary citizens, most of them. So please go back and think about it. The other point is about the sunset clause. In para 19, you say that it will be reviewed 1 year later and that you will not introduce a sunset clause. My point is, if you adopt the negative vetting approach, then you don't need 36 votes from natural members. And that is, instead, you can just get 18 votes by claiming a division. And with a split voting system, the government can control by canvassing 18 votes only the result. I don't think it's fair. And also, for the AVD rates, and I don't mean the doubled AVD, the revision of rates will also be done by way of negative vetting. So originally, it should be done by way of a bill. But now the whole Schedule 1 will be subject to negative vetting. I think this will change the balance between the executive and the legislature. As Mr. Martin Liao said in relation to the 2012 bill, he more or less questioned that the amendment bill might contravene the basic law. I hope the Secretary would reconsider this issue. The Democratic Party, despite these amendments, has strong views on it, because we're going to oppose it, because even in relation to other areas like healthcare, education, etc., this will twist the relationship between the legislature and the executive. Secretary, I have noted this point, and at a later stage, perhaps I will give some remarks in conclusion. What about TPS, Tenant Purchase Scheme? I note this point. I'm also aware of some cases, and my colleagues are following up on the issue. Second round, Mr. Porter. Now, I run the risk of repeating myself, but I don't quite understand the logic of Secretary's explanation. First of all, this is an extraordinary measure under exceptional circumstances. Secondly, Secretary, you said you try not to make major changes. However, you allow one car parking space but not two. So you make the decision. You make all the decisions. And you extend the time frame. So there is no logic in it. You just casually make any adjustments you want. There is no consistency. So I hope you can have some consistency. Unless you tell me that this is just an extraordinary measure and during exceptional times, and that after things get back to normal, this will be cancelled. I'm not convinced by the logic of the administration. And I don't think this measure is here to combat market speculation. We don't know what you want. Please understand our wish to have consistency and to have logic, to be logical. Secretary, now on car parking space, we agree that in our original policy, our intention is to help Hong Kong residents in buying homes. As for granting exemptions to one car parking space but not two, we understand there is in granting exemption to the residential property in a single instrument but not the car parking space, we understand there is a conflict. And we are also concerned about possible abuse in the market, so we need to make certain arrangements. For example, granting exemption to only one parking space but not two. The prevailing practice is or the prevailing phenomenon is for buyers to buy the residential property along with one car parking space. And when it comes to car parking space, it's easier to be defined. And if we were to change fundamentally the whole stamp duty regime, then that's a different matter. So we can deal with the issue with car parking space, which should meet the general expectation of the public. But we find it difficult to make major changes to the stamp duty regime. So for one car parking space, exemption will be given irrespective of whether it's for self-use. But if it's two parking spaces, even if they're for self-use, no exemption will be given. We are against this kind of irrational logic. You say this is extraordinary measure, so you can have all the say when this is only applied during exceptional circumstances. But this is not the case, so I disagree. Secretary, will you go back and reconsider? Please, Mr. Chair, please allow Secretary to respond. We understand this issue, and we have explained why we cannot fundamentally change this instrument-based system.
Mr. Abraham Shek, your party's Mr. Wang Dingong said that they should consider 12 months. Xin Zhonggai from Democratic Party also said that we should consider 12 months. Well, I have an amendment from 6 months to 12 months. And I hope that the Democratic Party and your party can lend a helping hand for the Hong Kong people, not for me, to support my amendment, to amend it from 6 months to 12 months. Second, James To spoke very well. He talked about the legislative intent. Negative vetting affects the whole executive legislative cooperation. But then he left. He spoke grandly, but when it came to the vote, he wasn't there. So what kind of logic is that? Secretary, it's hard to be a good person. You're doing much better. You've heard our views, but you are very selective. You should listen to all our views. Otherwise, you would be like the other secretary. I have another amendment. I support the DSD for residential property, but I'd like you to consider my suggestions have nothing to do with real estate hegemony. The Democratic Party says they won't support you, they support the government, but then they didn't vote. So he's making the same speech. I need to remind him. So you should examine the legislative intention. It's not for non-residential properties. So if you accept my suggestion, then car parking spaces can be dealt with very easily. Purchasing multiple properties on one instrument is not reasonable. You have a very large discrepancy, Secretary. So whether non-residential properties need to be monitored, I also responded a few times. You don't have anything else to say. I want to follow up on Mr. Abraham Sheck's question. We have to learn from Singapore. Singapore also has measures on non-residential property. They have special measures in special circumstances to deter speculation. But when it's for self-use, we have tough measures to deter speculation. But self-use, you cannot strangle that. So well, Singapore can do it. Well, you can do anything that you want. So why is there such a large outcry from SMEs and from the commercial sector for Hong Kong's development? Property for self-use, stimulating the economy. Why can't the government consider that? I've heard your views. I understand that these measures are inconvenient to the business sector. It's not just inconvenient, it's drastic. Well, similarly, these measures, whether it's residential, non-residential, it creates inconvenience. We feel these are special circumstances and we need these measures to cool the market. You might disagree with our methods, but overall we feel this is a demand, it's an effective demand management. Why do we have this debate? It's because there were exemptions in AVD. The exemptions are for Hong Kong PR. When they will have an exemption for self-use, we have considered their needs. And because of these exemptions, people, you are asking why there are exemptions here and not there. So that is the starting point for this debate. It's because we have exemptions for Hong Kong PR. But on the policy side, we should provide these exemptions for Hong Kong PR. But so in other words, you're saying the businesses don't deserve an exemption. The policy intent is to cater to housing needs for first-time buyers. So whether you are the commercial sector or non-commercial sector, you will feel inconvenience. There are added costs. But the exemption is only for residential units. But I understand the business concerns and legislators' concerns. So there are no exemptions for stimulating the economy. Well, regarding these two amendments, we welcome them. The first, purchase before disposal, that has answered some of our concerns. So this acquisition before disposal, buyers will not be subject to the AVD, and the exemption period is also extended, even though it covers pre-sale units. So we will accept the arrangements. So, Secretary, if you can relax it even further, we welcome your consideration. But we think the current proposal is acceptable. Second issue about car parking space, it has also answered our committee members' concerns. But we'd urge the Secretary to consider multiple units being transacted on one instrument. In our previous communication, we heard concerns of one instrument. You could use it to purchase a village house. And if you change that, it would affect them. But can you use a self-use concept as an exemption? Thank you. As we said, we will explain in detail. As I explained previously, it depends on how you amend and make fundamental changes. We are not afraid of the complexities, but any change, you need to consider the whole stamp duty ordinance. And whenever an ad valorem stamp duty is applied to an instrument, that has to, we have to look at all of those scenarios. We have to look at how many properties are in an instrument and how do we define properties. In fact, some people, village houses or related units can be purchased through an instrument. So if we use the objective standard, such as land registry, using that as an example, then some people, when they purchase related or three-story village houses for self-use, it would be more than one property. So we cannot underestimate and ignore these scenarios because it would affect of other people. So we cannot underestimate and neglect the impact on the public. Chairman, on related units, that's not a reason, because you need to set a number, 2 or 3, rather than having a large loophole. In paragraph 16, I want to clarify. Since it's here, let me ask. You're saying the buyer is acting on his, on her behalf, and 2, is not a beneficial owner of any other residential property and car parking space. Is that an or? And. So if I have a group of properties and parking spaces and I upgrade, so property plus parking space, upgrade for another property in the car parking space, so am I not eligible for the 6-month exemption? You understand what I'm saying? I originally had a parking space, and then I purchased another unit plus parking space, so I have an extra parking space. But I'm selling, or I purchase a unit plus car space, but then you're saying I already have a car parking space, but there is a 6-month exemption for upgrading. So I need to sell the car park, the old car park. So I have no car park. I need to rent one, and then I purchase a unit plus plus parking space. Then I can benefit from 16A, and then I sell the old unit. Well, isn't that cumbersome? So shouldn't there be exemptions for unit plus car park when you upgrade it for another unit and car park? Well, as we stated in previous occasion, any specific exemptions will have different scenarios and situations. As I emphasized before, when we interpret the law, it has to be clear, it has to be codified. So when we use a uniform standard, we admit that we cannot cover all upgrading scenarios and self-use scenarios. But why do we Why do we have narrow conditions? Because parking spaces are non-residential units in our whole stamp duty ordinance, not just the DSD, plus the BSD. Parking spaces are non-residential units, so there's no BSD and DSD. These two stamp duties target residential units. In our DSD exemption, people who purchase residential units plus parking spaces in one instrument, we have extended the consideration of self-use. So we hope the committee can understand the parking space is non-residential, but considering the self-use need, this is an extra arrangement. We don't want to affect the BSD and DSD parking space arrangement. We hope that in the committee stage amendments, we can bring this up for discussion and scrutiny. Well, after you've heard my example of upgrading from unit plus parking spaces to another unit plus parking space, that you can consider this. Well, we don't have any further questions, so no more questions. Then I would like the Secretary to summarize for us.
Okay. Madam Chair, well, it seems that we just had a heated discussion just now, and I also watched some playback online concerning your discussions, and we welcome all the tricky questions. So I thank members for your concerns and comments on various aspects of the bill. And as said before, we have all along been very concerned about members' questions and the intention of the demand-side management measures, and for comments not affecting this policy directive and the original intent of the bill, we try our best to respond to members' suggestions and comments, and that is why we have proposed the changes as set out in the beginning in my opening remarks. Now, to respond to the point on negative vetting, Mr. James To raised this issue, but at the last meeting, Madam Chair urged the administration to make our position clear as soon as possible because it is of members' concern. Now, inevitably, the demand-side management measures would cause some inconvenience to certain sectors of the community, but I emphasize that this is an extraordinary measure under exceptional circumstances. By adopting the negative vetting approach, we can swiftly respond to market changes and revising the rates. Of course, I note that there have been rounds of discussions on the measures, and some suggested whether we can draw reference from the former from the verbal undertaking given by the Secretary for Transport and Housing, and also the amendments proposed by members on the bill. And I'd like to state my position on these matters. All along, the government has strongly hoped that members could accept the negative vetting approach. We think that it can give certainty, and also it can allow the government to respond swiftly. As for a mechanism of allowing the upward adjustment to be harder than lower downward adjustment. That is in relation to this double stamp duty in the bill. This is based on the ad valorem duty system. That is to say, it is levied on the basis of considerations of property transactions of the instrument on a progressive scale, which is different from the bias stamp duty, which is which only has one more uniform tax structure, and we cannot simply advise whether the rates should be adjusted upwards or downwards. It will cause confusion in terms of implementation, and we cannot disseminate a clear message to the market. And also, in terms of the double stamp duty rates or the AVD rates, whether and also the original AVD tariff, the mixed mode, as suggested, would cause the bill to be difficult to be implemented. As for members' suggestions earlier, that is, under the negative vetting approach, if the legal notice expires within the period, the legal notice will become invalid. The tax bands and the scale would be uncertain. This will cause uncertainty. As far as taxation is concerned, this will also affect the certainty of the measures. If the adjustment proposed is vetoed, or if it's not approved in time, the stamp duty levied on the revised rates would be nullified, and this will affect all the transactions in the interim. And the IRD will have to follow up on the relevant invalid cases, and even to refund the duties levied. And this will again cause uncertainty, and the government and the measure will not achieve the purpose of responding swiftly to market changes. Chairman, I understand that the negative vetting approach is highly controversial, and there are complexities concerning the tax structure for stamp duty and ad valorem duties. And the government, therefore, will further examine all the suggestions in this regard. Some members just now also commented on the impact on the business environment in Hong Kong and the long-term economic development as a result of introduction of the double stamp duty. And I want to emphasize that the extraordinary measure is for the purpose of stabilizing the market, and it is for the long-term good of. And we understand that some buyers and some members of the business sector may be inconvenienced, but against the backdrop of abundant liquidity and tight supply of residential properties, the measure is in line with the overall interest of the community. If the asset bubble bursts, this will bring about a more drastic and negative impact on our economy. With exceptionally low interest rates and abundant liquidity, as well as tight supply of residential properties, we mustn't ignore the risks of property bubbles forming in Hong Kong, and it is therefore necessary for us to maintain the measures. The government will closely monitor the changes in the property market and will make prudent considerations and make necessary adjustments. Madam Chair, we have reached a critical stage. It's just 2 months away from the legislative recess. I hope members could think for the interest of Hong Kong and try to find common ground amidst our differences and to finish the scrutiny as soon as possible so that when necessary the government can make timely adjustments to the demand-side management measures. Thank you. All right, so the Secretary has given an ending speech, and we were supposed to start discussing Mr. Abraham Shack's proposed amendments. So I will seek members' views. If members would like to respond to Secretary's concluding remarks, Secretary, do you have time to respond to or listen to members' views? So who would like to speak? Mr. James To. 3 minutes. I don't understand, Madam Chair. Secretary talked about the reasons for not doing so and so, but he also talked about negative vetting. There are different mechanisms for upward adjustment and downward adjustments, and what Mr. Martinelli said is not feasible, so on and so forth. So all in all, it's about uncertainty. And you also have a risk of not seeing this bill passed. I don't know what is your choice. Of course, you expect that Mr. Abraham Shack will win and the Democratic Party will walk out again. But that may not be the case. Last time, the 15% was heavily criticized. But now it's just several, a few percent, and the market is cooling down. So there won't be any consequence if the bill is not passed. And also, Schedule 1 will have to be subject to negative vetting. And this is a major change to the tax or stamp duty regime. Then what about the objective of the Legislative Council in monitoring the government in the use of public money? It is unreasonable for Schedule 1 to be subject to negative vetting as well. Secretary, as I said just now, the ad valorem duty involves, and the tax structure in this regard and the tariff in this regard contains a lot of complexities. And I want to point out the shortcomings of some suggestions put forward, and as I said in my remarks, because we've noted the controversies over the original proposal, and to address members' concerns, we will consider. But again, we need to make comparisons and consider carefully. Mr. Abraham Shack. There are justifications for any system. Mr. James To spoke from the perspective of principles. Some talked about principles, and they uphold the principles. Some don't. I don't think negative vetting should be adopted. Unfortunately, last time somebody staged a walkout, and in the end the bill was passed. And just this time, it's just like last time. Professor Anthony Chung, the secretary, adopted different approaches. And what is that? For upward adjustment, negative vetting can be adopted. And for downward adjustment, positive vetting is required. That's more or less the case. And this is outrageous. This is so outrageous that I don't want to remember it. Anyway, you should do what you should. Principles are important. Some like to talk about principles, but they don't uphold them. But I uphold the principles. I all along have either objected or supported the measures. Now, you talked about tackling the rising property prices. What properties? Because originally the chief executive talked about residential properties, not non-residential properties. So you said it will be reviewed, but when? Say non-residential property prices have dropped by 50% in not prices, I mean transactions. Isn't it the time? The transactions dropped by 50%. Of course, they're happy because when the market plummets, they get votes. Of course, they are happy. But I'm talking about the economy. Now, Mr. Lam Tai-Fai talked about Article 5 of the Basic Law. We're a capitalist society. These are economic principles. It affects people doing business, and this is a major problem.
You don't need to target non-residential units. That's not the legislative intention. Well, I already summarized, so I don't want to respond. But since we talked about the hybrid mode, and that is not applicable in this bill committee. Well, the issue is you don't have a principle. The secretary is responding. It's the same bill. Well, your time's up. No response. Fight. This bill, DSD, it's been scrutinized for more than a year. We've been very diligent, and Mabel has been responding. While we're getting weary and fatigued, we want to legislate as soon as possible. We agree on helping the PR. Well, I have to thank the Secretary for attending. We had some expectations. I thought that he was saving the good news for us today, and he was just leaking a little bit to the media yesterday. I was thinking we were going to get a big present, and he was going to take on board our views and make amendments, but I'm disappointed. Mabel has heard us very clearly. One document, multiple, one instrument, multiple properties, that's unreasonable, it's not logical. We want a reasonable explanation because we know that the Secretary can make the decision. But the We've been treated like fools. There's no logic to his response. I don't think anybody can say they understand the logic. I support HKPR purchasing, but by targeting non-residential units, how can you help people first-time purchases? Turnover is low. It doesn't indicate that people are able to achieve their housing targets. Well, we have no price increase, turnover is low, but you're trying to help people acquire their property. Well, the bill has so many loopholes that you're not plugging. We're always talking about tax ordinance, Section 29. He says there are a lot of loopholes and there's nothing you can do about it. I won't talk about 39E anymore because nobody will support me, but the Secretary, I'm even further disappointed with your attendance. I'm even more determined in how to cast my vote. When people ask me, if a businessman asks me, can I purchase 50 properties on one instrument and get an exemption? How come you don't understand? You must have not attended meetings. Next, Mr. Wong Ting-gong. This bill has been scrutinized for more than a year. As the Secretary said, these are special measures in special times. So I personally feel that even though it's relaxed, but there are still a lot of areas that are unsatisfactory. For example, if you could relax it to 12 months, I'd be a bit more satisfied. But no matter what, I would still like to see it enacted as soon as possible, because we still have a lot of money, a lot of funds in escrow, in lawyers' hands. Well, I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see the bill repealed. So, but can you conclude it in this legislative year? Well, we have big traffic jams. Even if chairman convenes 3 meetings a week, well, we can't make it. Even Saturday is filled up. We have severe scheduling problems. So before summer recess, no matter how hard you try, it's quite hard to finish the job. I'm not optimistic. Even though even Lam Dai Fai says he's weary and fatigued. Well, we will decide when we'll have a resumption of a second reading. I understand everybody's feelings, and there has been a lengthy scrutiny, and individual events have been very controversial because we have different perspectives, and during this filibuster period, we're all very busy, and I sympathize with you, and I understand what you're going through. So in our proposals and scrutiny, we want to resolve the matter, and we are adopting the most sincere attitude, and we hope to conclude it. Chairman, I'd like to add that overall speaking, I said I was dissatisfied with the Secretary's response. But I'm satisfied. I appreciate your attitude. Oh, we are just dealing with the subject matter. Well, I don't accept his content, but I accept his attitude. I have to thank the Secretary for his 2 amendments. It's better than nothing. Thank you. Okay, we welcome and thank the Secretary's attendance. I'd like to update our progress. We've been scrutinizing it more than a year, and when we resume second reading, it depends on our efforts. So, Mr. Abramchak, we have to deliberate your CSA on the next occasion. If we have CSAs, you should submit them as soon as possible. And we also have Mr. James To's letter and the administration. Could you also provide your CSAs? The different issues, and if the administration has an update, please submit to our bill committee as soon as possible. The next meeting is Monday, 19th of May, 4:30. I just want him we have just technical amendments. I want to conclude this business. It's been almost 2 years. We have been coordinating our efforts, and I understand that there's a lot of filibustering going on. We need to arrange schedules. So, Secretary, could you submit your CSAs? Yes. So, we will submit it to the committee as soon as possible. Could you exempt the non-residential units? Okay, once again, we have to thank the Secretary for attending our meeting and officials attending our meeting. Next meeting, 19th of May, 4:30. So we don't have any other business. We'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.